sister got married while I was in hospital after a very serious injury, and family got bashed by everyone for being so heartless to do wedding without me, so they blame me for ruining her wedding, and it just got worse for them because it's all out in public and nobody wants to talk to them now. I've been in the hospital for about a week now because a couple of days ago, I got into a serious car accident while driving to the hotel where my sister was supposed to get married. It happened around the evening because of some stupid drunk driver, and I ended up with a fractured shoulder blade and a pretty bad neck injury as well. And this happened one full day before the wedding, so it's not like my family didn't have the time to visit me. I was all alone. My husband wasn't with me because he had planned on arriving the next day after wrapping up his work, and I just really wanted to be there for my sister because she and I are very close, or at least that's what I used to believe. From what I've been told, I was unconscious when they found me and I didn't regain consciousness until hours later. Even then, I had a concussion and I personally had no idea what was going on at the time, except that I was in a lot of pain. But by the time I fully came to my senses, my husband had been called and he had arrived late at night, and I was grateful for that. Later on, I did ask him why my family hadn't shown up, and that's when he informed me that they were gearing up for the wedding. He told me that they had been informed about my accident, and even though the hospital that I had been brought to was just a 20-minute drive away from the hotel, they hadn't bothered to show up. He told me about it in the evening before the wedding room, and I tried to call my parents and my sister, but it just kept going to voicemail, and I knew that they were ignoring me because they didn't respond to any of my texts either. People might think of me as selfish, but I was really hoping that they didn't get married without me because that would really break my heart. I couldn't believe that even though I was in the hospital because of such a serious injury, they still couldn't bring themselves to show up for me. Both my husband and I were really let down by their behavior because I would never do this to them. In fact, I have been in that position and I've chosen my family. I'll get to that incident later, but before that, I feel like I have to mention that I had a huge part to play in this wedding, since without me, my family wouldn't even have been able to afford the kind of wedding that they were having for my sister. So the least they could have done was just show up for me, and that's what I'm really upset about. Not the fact that they didn't postpone the wedding for me. First off, I covered like 50% of the wedding expenses that my parents were actually supposed to cover. But my mom hasn't been working for the past couple of years and my dad just retired recently. So of course they couldn't afford the kind of wedding that my sister wanted, and so they had to ask me to help them out. And I gladly did it as well because my sister is very special to me and I wanted her to be happy, and she knew about this as well. So I felt like it was very ungrateful of all of them not to visit me in the hospital, considering the fact that I had paid for so much. Secondly, the incident that I was talking about just now, where I had been in their position and I had chosen my family, was just a couple of years ago. I was about to go off on my honeymoon with my husband just a month after our wedding, but unfortunately my mom had a minor heart episode and I still canceled everything just so I could stay with them regardless of whether I would get a refund or not. We lost some money, but at least I was happy that I was able to be there for my mom. I thought that they would be the same way about me, but what happened recently showed me that that was not the truth. And the cherry on top was the fact that to explain my absence from the wedding, my family had told everybody that I had decided to skip the wedding because my company had decided to send me for an impromptu business trip with a very significant potential client. So obviously everybody thought that I was missing the wedding because of work, and one of my cousins actually texted me to let me know that the wedding was a lot of fun, and everyone was very disappointed that I couldn't make it, but they hoped that my deal would go well. I received that message the day after my surgery, and it was very confusing for me because I had no idea what he was talking about. So I called my cousin and asked him about that message, and he explained to me that he knew I had to skip the wedding because of work, and I could tell from his voice that he thought it was not the right thing to do. I don't think my family cares about my image or reputation, so I decided not to care about theirs either. I just told my cousin the truth about why I hadn't been there at the wedding, and for a couple of seconds, he couldn't even believe it. But then when he realized that I was telling him the truth, he started apologizing profusely. That was not it for me though. I knew that pretty much everybody in the wedding probably thought that I had missed everything because of my work, and that was not the case. So I decided to post a picture of myself and my injuries from the hospital itself, and in the caption, I spoke about my accident. I didn't mention anything about the wedding or my family, but my relatives are clever enough to figure out things on their own and read between the lines. There was an outpouring of support for me in my comments section, and on the other hand they had already started bashing my family for having the wedding without me, and that's when my family finally responded to me. It was my mom who called me up pretty late at night, and she didn't even seem to care that I was in the hospital for an injury. As soon as I picked up, she immediately started yelling at me and told me that I had no business posting stuff like that on social media, knowing that it would bring them a lot of backlash. She was the one who told me that the rest of the family had already started bashing them, calling them selfish and heartless because of what they had done by having the wedding without me, and also because they had chosen to lie about me and paint me in a negative light, even though I had gone above and beyond for them always. I couldn't understand why my mom had a problem with what my relatives were saying about them because as far as I was concerned, they were being very honest about what kind of people my parents and my sister were. So I argued with my mom because by then I was also pretty upset about everything that had happened, and I told her that I was not going to be sorry for posting what I was going through, especially when they had been lying about me to cover up their own selfishness. And then my dad started screaming at me while my sister was crying in the background, saying that I was the selfish one because he couldn't believe that I actually expected my family to cancel the entire wedding that had already been paid for just because I got into an accident. And alright, maybe that was a little selfish of me, but I told him that the least they could have done was at least show up for me. They didn't even do that, so I don't understand why they're acting as if this is all my fault. They are getting bashed by the rest of the family because they did something messed up. It's as simple as that. I don't have any part to play in this. I just exposed their lies, and that's why everybody else went after them. It's not like I asked them to do that specifically, but that didn't seem to matter to my parents. They just kept yelling at me, and at one point my sister started screaming at me, accusing me of ruining her wedding on purpose. That was the final nail in the coffin for me, and I just hung up after that. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to be out of the hospital so I can go home, and even though it's been 3 days since I last spoke to my family, I've been feeling terrible about everything that happened. I don't know what it is. I've just been feeling like maybe I'm the one at fault here for expecting my family to cancel the wedding just to accommodate me, and I really don't want to be one of those entitled people who can't see anything beyond themselves. So even though my husband doesn't think that I've done anything wrong, I still feel like I need a second opinion. So I defer expecting my family to put my sister's wedding on hold so they could at least just come and see me in the hospital. Update 1. Hey, thank you everyone for all the comments. I'm out of the hospital now. It's been a couple of days since I came back home, and even though everything still hurts, I'm feeling much better now. I still haven't spoken to my family because I think they have made their decision. They don't want to speak to me, and I think I don't need to speak to them right now either. At the end of the day, whether or not I was entitled is another matter altogether, because the core of my problem is something else altogether. It's just that I felt really let down by them because their behavior made me feel like I wasn't important to them at all. And yeah, like I said, I would never treat them the same way, and I have never treated them like this. Maybe it was too much for me to expect that they should have canceled the wedding altogether or postponed it, but I don't think it was unreasonable for me to want them to at least visit me. I know that there was just 1 day to go before the wedding when they could have actually visited me, but I think they could have made it if they wanted to, even if it had been just for a couple of minutes. Even if they had just shown up and then left so they could go back to whatever events they had planned, I would have been cool with everything. At least that way I would have known that they care about me, but they couldn't even be bothered to do that. So how was I supposed to let that go? And let's not forget, instead of being honest with everybody else at the wedding, they chose to lie about me and make me look like the bad guy. I've spoken to a couple of my cousins and stuff, and they didn't mention words. They told me that they were very upset that I did not show up at the wedding because of work. And my family had even gone to the extent of pretending to be disappointed that I couldn't show up. They had even called me a workaholic and stuff, because that's literally just a story they had invented to cover up for themselves. And this is another thing that my husband and I discussed recently. Why would they even need to cover up if they were sure that they were not doing the wrong thing? If they had been so confident about their decisions, they wouldn't have felt the need to lie about me and make up reasons for my absence. They would have just told everybody the truth, but they didn't because they were worried about how it would make them look, and that was the bottom. They knew that what they had done was kind of messed up, and that's why they had chosen to lie. But now that they had been caught, they were trying to blame it all on me. And I'm sorry, but that's not going to work because I have prioritized my family my entire life. This time I'm not going to do that, and I've also been planning on asking for my money back. I don't know for sure whether I'll get it back or not, but it's worth a try because I didn't even get to attend the wedding that I paid for. And maybe it was because of unavoidable circumstances, but I don't really care. I just need my money back so I can do something more productive with it now. Update 2. Hi. So after receiving a bunch of comments from my last post, I decided to finally reach out to my parents. I didn't want to give them the opportunity to bore me, so I decided not to call them. I just left them a message saying that I had thought about everything and I felt like they needed to return the money to me because whatever I had spent on my sister's wedding, it didn't even seem worth it at this point. And since I had already ruined everything according to them, I might as well go the whole way and ruin it some more. After I sent that message, I didn't expect them to reply so soon, but I got a reply within 15 minutes, and they told me that since it was my sister's wedding, I would have to speak to her and they couldn't do anything about this. They also told me that they would really appreciate it if I did not contact them in the future unless it was an emergency. And I know I probably shouldn't have done it, but I just couldn't resist it. I replied to that message saying that I didn't see the point of contacting them for emergencies because I had already tried that a couple of days ago and they had just ignored me. That message got me blocked, but I don't care. It was totally worth it. Anyway, after that, I decided to text my sister and she didn't even bother to reply to me. She just blocked me. I can forgive my parents and just let it go, but with her, I was even more disappointed because I felt like she, of all people, should have understood why I was hurt, that they didn't even visit me when I was in the hospital. So when I noticed that she had blocked me, I decided to call her up from my work phone number because I was not willing to let this go. I didn't call her up to yell at her or berate her. I literally just wanted to talk to her and get to the bottom of this. I felt bad about what was going on and I thought that if I called her, maybe we would be able to clear the air. So with that intention, I called her. But she just picked up and started cursing at me. She called me a lot of derogatory names and said that after what I had done to ruin her wedding, there was no way she was returning any money. She even said that I should just count it as a favor that she's keeping this private and not exposing me to all our relatives as a total miser. And when I tried to talk to her just to calm her down, she started cursing at me even more and told me that she didn't need to take this BS from me anymore. Apparently, I had already shown my true colors to her by making her wedding all about myself and said that she should have seen this coming because, according to her, I had always been jealous of her. I almost started crying at that point, so I just hung up without another word since that was too much for me to bear. More than my parents, it was my sister whom I had always loved and adored. And for me to hear such things coming from her, it was unimaginable. So after that phone call, I texted her saying that I did not need that money back. And I also told her that I had just called to at least try and clear the air with her because I thought that even if I couldn't clear the air with my parents, at least she would be better at understanding me. And I had hoped that she would have calmed down since our last conversation, but clearly that hadn't happened. And now I didn't want to speak to her anyway because I could see that she was just like our parents. She was just as selfish and egoistic and I wanted nothing to do with her because clearly doing things out of love for my family had been the biggest mistake of my life. I told her that I would never be bothering her again because I could see that she didn't even possess an ounce of gratitude in her body for me. But that's not surprising given that's the way that she has been raised by our parents. Having said that, I blocked her from both my numbers and now I don't think I'm going to be speaking to my family anytime soon. I have made them feel sufficiently bad about whatever happened. At least I have the satisfaction of knowing that. Update 3. So it's been 2 weeks since my last update when I last spoke to my sister and my parents and asked them to return the money that I had to put into the wedding. And I guess they finally had some awakening or something because yesterday, my sister sent me an email saying that she and her husband had decided that they did not want to be indebted to me, especially given the circumstances of our relationship right now. I have no idea why she was speaking like that, but whatever it was, I just told her that she would be more than welcome to return the money to me, and I even sent her all the receipts, quoted an amount, and provided her with the necessary details for whatever method she chose to pay me back in. And while I was doing the calculations myself, I realized that I had actually put a lot of money into the wedding and that made me even more angry that in spite of everything that I had done, they still couldn't be bothered to show up for me. For the record, it wasn't just my sister that I was upset with because it was her wedding or whatever. It was also my parents because nobody actually knew that I had been funding the wedding. Everyone had assumed that it was my parents and I was not supposed to talk about it either because for my parents, this was an image issue. If somehow people found out that I was the one funding the wedding and not them, they thought that they would be judged and so they requested me to keep quiet about it and I actually had. I still haven't spoken about it to anyone and that just makes me so upset knowing that I was doing all this for my family and they couldn't bring themselves to care about me in the slightest. Anyway, after I wrote back to my sister, I received an email from her about half an hour later saying that since it was a significant amount of money, she and her husband would be paying it back in installments over the next couple of months, and it would take them a while, but they would surely clear their debts. Then she thanked me for everything that I had done and said that she hoped that after this, I wouldn't feel the need to contact them anymore. I was really tempted to reply to them and say that I wasn't exactly inclined to contact them even now and it was they who had reached out to me. But I let it go because it just wasn't worth it. Over the past 2 weeks, the one thing that I have realized is that my family was only there for me when it was convenient for them. They were my best friends when they needed help in any situation. More often than not, they only needed my help for financial matters. I'm doing pretty well for myself right now, so it's not surprising that they usually only contact me when they need money for something or the other. But it hadn't even occurred to me that it might be their way of using me because they were so subtle about everything, so insanely manipulative that I didn't even realize I was being used. I thought that this was just how families work. This is how we do things for each other and we never bring it up as favors to one another, and I thought that they would extend the same courtesy to me. But now that I think of it, they never had. Even with little things like they would hardly ever accept my dinner invitations unless they needed something or were building up for a big ask. And even though I would never ask them to pay me back whenever I did them a favor or whatever, they would have no shame in asking me to pay them back for whenever we would meet for lunch or coffee or whatever. It didn't matter who it was, whether it was my parents or my sister. They were all the same when it came to money. And now that I think of it, I just find it disgusting because all this while I was going above and beyond for them because I thought they were my family and that I needed to do this. Only now do I realize that I have been nothing but stupid. I haven't been doing anything for my family, but I've been letting them walk all over me like a doormat. And just this one time since I've asked for my money back, my sister is making such a huge deal out of it as if she's doing me a favor by returning my money to me. I'm just never going to understand this attitude that my family has, and I don't think that I want to, because if I did, I guess I would probably turn out to be exactly like them. And I'm really glad that I'm not. I don't want to be anything like these people, and granted I have been a bit stupid about my family in the past, but that's not going to happen ever again. Personally, I feel like being a naive emotional fool is still better than being sly and cunning like them. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, enough about my family. I'm gonna get back to work now because I don't want to run about this anymore since I feel like my head is going to burst now. Update 4. So it's been a month since I last spoke to my sister, and today the first payment came through. It's very little money, but I'm impressed that she actually started paying me back, because for a while I'd actually started to think that maybe she was bluffing about the whole thing so she could feel big. Anyway, it's not like that kind of money is going to make a dent, but whatever. It's still something. Apart from that, I've been making a lot of progress with my injuries, and even though it still hurts to move, I'm feeling significantly better, and at least I'm not in constant pain like before. I've been working from home and I've had to significantly cut down on my hours because I can't just sit and work for long hours at a stretch anymore. So that's something that I'm gonna have to need to work on, because eventually I do plan on going back to work in a more full-fledged manner. My husband has been a great help around the house and everything because he's taken on a bigger share of the chores since we can't split everything equally like we used to before. And the housekeeper hardly even has anything to do anymore. And it's not just the physical labor that he's taking care of, he's also been taking care of me emotionally. In spite of myself, I do find myself missing my family terribly occasionally, because even though I know that they don't care about me, it's still hard for me to bring myself to stop caring for them. Right from my childhood, I had always been a very family-oriented person, and it's my misfortune that I was not born into a family that deserved me. And I guess my husband could sense whenever I was feeling low because of my family, so he would make special efforts to make me feel better. Sometimes he organizes dates at home. Sometimes he surprises me by cooking my favorite meals, and other times it's just some small gestures like bringing me flowers or chocolates or whatever. But he just always makes sure that I know that I'm loved, and it doesn't matter whether my family loves me or not. He's going to be there to make up for all of it. I really feel lucky that I found him, because I don't think anyone else could love me as much as he does. Also, I personally feel like even his family values me more than my own, since my in-laws have been visiting me almost every week to make sure that I'm doing well, and I really appreciate it. My mother-in-law even helps out around the house occasionally if my husband can't make it home in time from work. And on one hand, I find it very sad that my family doesn't seem to care for me like that. But on the other hand, I count myself lucky that I've married into and become a part of a family that cares for each other so much. It's really beautiful. Update 5 Hive. It's been 8 months since my last update, and a lot of things have changed since then. My shoulder blade has almost completely healed, and in the next couple of months or so, maybe we might get the plate removed as well. I've taken up physiotherapy to get better, and it's kind of tiring, but I'm getting better. My husband and I are also trying for a baby right now, because now that my health is slowly improving, I think it's the right time to start a family. And I'm already in my early 30s. I don't want to delay it anymore. I'm in a good place at work. Money's good, so why not? As for my family, I still haven't spoken to them in the past 8 months, and I don't even miss them anymore. I've realized that they were not good for me, and missing them was not going to change the facts. At the end of the day, they might have been good to me when I was a child, but at this age, in the recent past, they had been anything but good as a family, and I don't need to be part of this unhealthy toxic dynamic anymore. My sister has still continued to pay me back, and she's already returned half the money, so that's great. We haven't met each other face to face though, because I haven't been attending any of my family events for a while, since I haven't felt up to it in quite a long time. But recently, my cousin got engaged, and I thought that I would have to meet my family. But luckily my cousin told me that since the wedding, the rest of the family also hasn't been on good terms with my parents and my sister. So it's very likely that I might not have to see them at all, but I'm sure that they'll find a way to blame me for it as well.